All right, good afternoon, everyone. I call this November 18, 2025 hybrid meeting of the Board of Finance to order. I'll start the meeting off with a motion to approve the August 19, 2025 Board of Finance meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Vice Chair Barboa. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signaling affirmative, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, that passes 5-0. And we'll move into our presentation for the afternoon. We have a presentation from Mr. Treasurer Eichenberg. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. If I may I wish the county manager a happy anniversary. I noticed the flowers and I had to ask what they were for, but happy anniversary to you. Jumping into this quickly on page 3, I just wanted to talk to you just briefly about property taxes. On November 1st, when we started mailing out notices of value, the 2015 taxes on 1,413 parcels of land fell off of the tax roll, meaning that their 2015 taxes are no longer owed. By state statute, they're presumed paid after 10 years of delinquency. It totals on just real property, $1.7 million for 771 of those parcels. And my reason for bringing this to your attention is that's money that we could collect, that we could earn interest on if we had the money in the bank, so to speak. So on the last bullet there, you see that in March of 2025, the Property Tax Division, which is the one that are charged with collecting delinquent taxes after 3 years, they had 120 properties scheduled for a tax sale. 100 of those 120 taxpayers came in and paid their bill, and 20 were auctioned. Now they've got another one planned for December 18th, 2025, and that totals 79 properties, or less than 200 properties for this calendar year, when we have over 1,200 that we know are delinquent. And to give you another, just kind of a quick statistic there, I asked how many are delinquent at 5 years, and there was a total of 874 properties in Bernalillo County that are delinquent 5 years, okay? So the conversation came up at the county manager's retreat back in July with Nick Ham, because he feels that most of the properties that he deals with that are substandard in the county are delinquent in their taxes. And that brought in Natalia from Mr. Martinez's office on how we could actually progress faster and do this better if we could do it in-house. And so that's what we're hoping that we can move forward with. I've reached out to the property tax director, a job that I had many years ago, as to whether or not we couldn't speed up the process with the employees from the treasurer's office. We still want to keep it separate, because we don't want to be the judge and the jury, so to speak, that these are delinquent and let's go to tax sale. We need a third party involved in it, but we would certainly appreciate the commission and you as the Board of Finance seeing that we get all of our money, because our money makes you money. And so we just wanted to bring that to your attention. As we skip to the next one, that's on the thing I brought up several months ago, which was Valiant Consulting Group was hired to come in and review and discuss with my employees their job descriptions. We have rewritten those job descriptions. We put drafts together and we're providing those to the county manager's office and HR, and we're hoping to get back to you probably in February. As we heard the county manager say already this afternoon, you're pretty busy in December and January. And if you're busy, that means the county manager's busy. And that means it's going to be tough for me to get time to discuss these kind of things. But to give you just a quick example, you earned $34 million last year in interest income, which is, when you stop and think about interest income to the county, it's the third highest revenue source that Bernalillo County has. Gross receipts tax, property tax, and then interest income. And the man that I've got that runs that investment program is paid the same amount as 5 other deputies, from the clerk's office from the assessor's office and the 2 that are in the treasurer's office. All 6 of them make the same thing. Yet the 2 deputies in the sheriff's office make considerably more. Now, I understand the differences in jobs, but that's what I want to point out to you is the difference in job in, say, if I called Ryan my chief deputy and chief investment officer, why he should be paid more money. And that falls in line then with a lot of the other staff people that provide that kind of support. Our office is just a little bit different than everybody else's. And with that, since I've been talking about Ryan, I'll turn this over to Ryan because I know you guys are in a hurry, and let him give you our financial report. Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, if I may, I just wanted to say a couple of quick things here. The first slide that you presented is really interesting, and I really appreciate you bringing that to our attention, that, you know, as it stands, the debt just evaporates, which we know it doesn't, but for all intents and purposes it does. We lose out on those revenues. And it also is the best deterrent for crime, and not paying your taxes is a crime, is swift and certain justice, right? And in this case, there is no justice if we're just saying we're going to let it evaporate off the rolls and nothing happens. So I'm just curious, your proposal in working with the state, how would that work? Because clearly they're not capturing a percentage of those properties. How do you propose we would increase that, or does that require legislative action?
Ideally, it would be having the county manager enter an MOU, perhaps with the property tax division, where we could actually speed up the process by doing the delinquent searches for them, title searches, anybody that, in case somebody has died, we've already reached out to find out whether or not there's any heirs, family, whatever. We could speed that process up for the property tax department. What they have in Bernalillo County right now is just 1 contract employee. That's all they have in Bernalillo County. We're the largest county when it comes to property. We probably maintain better than 40% of all property in the state of New Mexico. The property tax division gets no money from the general fund of the state legislature. All of their income is from property tax sales because they tack on their fee. And once it goes to the state, they get all the penalty and the interest on the properties. So they kind of pick and choose what they want to do. And they only do what they have to do in order to meet their budget. And what I'm trying to do is get these off the non-paying tax roll to paying. One of the other things down the road would be the minimum bids. Some of they'll come in and they'll have a $40,000 minimum bid. Well, nobody's going to take the chance on that. But if we could lower the bid, what we get out of that is next year it's going to be on the tax roll. And that's what we want. But that's another discussion.
Very insightful. Really, really appreciate that. Yes, Vice Chair.
If I may just ask a follow-up question, make sure I'm understanding. Are you saying that building properties that might be nuisance, that Nick Ham's department has to deal with, and that's a long process, if we also, then he was saying that oftentimes it's both a nuisance and they're not paying their property taxes, and that we could we could speed up the process because we can go the tax route, not just the property nuisance route. Is that correct?
You've got the concept correct, yes. What Nick was trying to tell me is that he's already in the field. He already sees these. He knows where there are. What the property tax division has to do is they has to red tag them. We've got to go out there and physically place a tag on them. Well, when you've already got a county department that's already doing it, it speeds it up. Instead of it taking us a week to do 50 properties, maybe it takes a day.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think that, like, in your point that we're only covering about 100 and some a year, and there's 800 on backlog. So thank you.
Very, very insightful. And lastly, just on your staffing study and all of that, just to say absolutely support and appreciate that. And I know the state has significantly increased their salaries and continue to ask for increases at SIC and some of the other investment divisions because we're competing with BlackRock and these giant financial institutions that can pay their CIOs way more than government, and if we're capping ours out because they're, you know, we just have a uniform level across the board for that title, I think we're missing the punchline there. So,
I agree with that, Mr. Chair, and thank you for pointing that out. If we just paid Ryan 3% of what he brought in, that'd be over $1 million. And
He
we're
likes
getting
that.
him pretty cheap. Ryan?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Board of Finance, good afternoon. I'll be really quick here. This is a similar report that you've seen in previous quarters, just kind of going through what we've covered in the past. Again, I always like to lead with the guiding principles: safety, liquidity, then yield. We're not chasing yield. Essentially, I see our role is that we're here to pay bills. We have bills due. We need to have cash to pay those bills. Second is just a graphical image of the structure of the portfolios in case there's some question or discussion that we need to refer back to. I think this graphic helps explain that. Jumping into the collateral review, if you see in the far right-hand column, all of our accounts were fully collateralized. They met the state collateral requirement to 50%. 2 of those accounts were collateralized to the 50% requirement, but then there was still an uninsured and uncollateralized balance. Low risk, in my opinion, but that is conceptually, if Wells Fargo was to go out of business on October 31st, the county would have lost $5.7 million. Very low risk. There's some trade-offs with addressing that to be at 100%, but I think this is a comfortable risk here. Jumping into property taxes, as Mr. Treasurer mentioned, on November and earlier this month, we mailed out around 277,000 property tax bills to property owners in Bernalillo County for the total receivable of around $969 million. And if you see on the bottom stretch portion there, that only $210 million of that is Bernalillo County's portion. And then you see the breakout in the pie chart with how those property taxes are distributed to the different funds. Jumping into gross receipts tax. Gross receipts tax for fiscal year 26 first quarter, we're about $6.8 million over what we were in fiscal year 2025. This is on track with what we expected in the budget. We might jump to the next slide. If you see in the right-hand column there, the $73.3 million that we've collected, that's about 25% of the budget, which is consistent. Generally, gross receipts tax comes in 25% a quarter, and we're right there on track. You see on the left-hand side, the property tax, you say we're a quarter of the way through the year, but we've only collected 2% of the property tax. Like, what is going on? It's perfectly normal. We send out property tax bills in November. They're due in 2 equal installments. I'm anticipating that we'll get around $116 million by the end of December, and that'll be just the Bernalillo County portion of that. So around 56% of the budget will be there by December. Jumping into portfolio balances, if you see on the far right-hand column, the book yield for each of our portfolios. I had a thought after I submit this report that it'd be good to compare where rates were last year so you can see how they changed. So if we look back in September of 2024, the highly liquid bucket, that was around 4.75 was the yield. That's come down because the Federal Reserve has reduced those interest rates. So I'll tweak this for the next quarter so you can see that change year over year. Bottom line, we ended September 30th with $624.2 million. This next slide breaks out that portion of property taxes that we collected on other people's, on the other entities' behalf. And so we have $709 million of last year. This year we're $622.5, so a reduction of around $86 million. Most of that, $60 million roughly, is attributed to the drawdown of ARPA money. And then around $18 million of that was the purchase of Poblana Place that occurred on September 30th. And so I want to take just a quick moment to thank Deputy County Manager Shirley Reagan and Madam Manager Chavez for keeping the Treasurer's Office in the loop on the affordable housing process. It's been huge for us to be able to project cash flows and know where to put money and so that we can earn some interest, but then still have money to pay bills. So thank you for keeping us in the loop, and excellent job with that. Graphical representation here that shows the ending balances going back 5 years. If you see the dotted line, that's where the core portfolio is currently. If you look back to September 2020, it's really interesting that our core portfolio today is about as much money as we had 5 years ago. So you can see that balances grew quite substantially after the pandemic, and I'm anticipating those to start coming back down. So a little bit later in the slide, in the presentation, you'll see a slide that's recommending to move that core portfolio down to be about $350 million to around $450 million, because we don't want to. If we were back in 2020 and we had all 99% of our cash invested, we wouldn't have cash to pay bills. And again, that's our main function, is have cash to pay bills. The next several slides detail the underlying investment holdings in each portfolio. I'll skim through these pretty quickly. They're all permissive investments by statute and all highly rated. And then finally, here's just a graphical representation of, again, our main focus is cash to pay bills. Well, let me back up. Main focus is safety. After that's covered, we then make sure that we have cash to pay bills. So this graphic here will show you that, yeah, we have substantial cash to pay bills. And then finally, as Treasurer Eichenberg mentioned, for the first quarter of 2026, we earned just under $6.5 million in investment income. And again, that's just from strategically placing money and knowing when we need to have money to pay bills. So if we know, the further out we can see into the future, the better we can position our cash to then earn a little bit more interest. And with that, I will transfer it over to Deanne with GPA to go through the recommendations for the coming quarter. Deanne, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Ryan, and members of the board. So we're going to touch on the strategic plan for the portfolio, and we're looking at adjusting, as Ryan just mentioned. I can't see the slides. Just mentioned we're going to be shifting the core component of the portfolio down. If you recall, that was moved up over the last couple of years because your overall balance has moved up, and your components of the highly liquid, your cash match, and your core all work together. And this is exactly what we expect to happen as your balances decrease. We want to be able to adjust the components of that. So we're reducing the high side, which was originally at 550. The low side was 400. We're now moving that down to 350 on the low side and 450 on the high side. This results in discipline for the investment program that before we can increase the portfolio higher than that 450 level, we come through and look at the recommendations that go through both the Finance Committee as well as the board here. And in this case, we're starting to use some of that money that's maturing out of the core and going over to fund your ongoing liquidity. So very healthy positions for the portfolios to be able to move in and out between each other to provide stable income for the county. Next slide is the upcoming liquidity maturity. So we are going to, as your tax dollars come in, we are looking to continually fund your ongoing cash needs. This has been a huge added value for the county, where we're actually projecting and working closely with Ryan on what your cash needs are, and brings confidence to that your known liabilities are funded through this cash match portfolio. So it's basically running at about a 6-month pace. So as the cash dollars come in, we'll start to fund the next 3 to 6 months on known liabilities and not invest those out longer. As they come due, they're going back over to pay the ongoing bills there at the county. Next slide. Then within the core investment portfolio, we maintain a benchmark that's still running right at 2.5 years. Even though the portfolio is going to shift smaller, we'll still be maintaining the dynamics of that portfolio. Currently, we have a little bit overweighting towards the front end, again, providing that liquidity within the investments. And then we'll fill in that empty bucket there, that 3 to 4 year area, as maturities come due and we reinvest the portfolio. All that's being at the direction. We present the investment proposals or discussions with the Finance Committee, and then we execute upon those directives from Ryan once we know the balances are updated and you don't need the cash. Next slide. So we're also looking at asset allocation. So one focus has really been on looking at the value in the portfolio. U.S. Treasuries are currently overweighted at 40% of the core investments relative to the agencies at 52%. You may recall that we did move out of supranationals, which was a really strategic move where spreads had become very tight in that area, and those trades made a value trade to move back to Treasury securities. And so we continue to hold the course. As treasuries are being issued, they can continue to present the value. We are not seeing a lot of yield spread going into agencies and keeping the portfolio in high quality. Next slide. And then in the bond proceed portfolio, the recommendation, we take those recommendations from the finance team on where the next placement of the maturity should go. There's some bond issues coming up, and we are managing that and making the effective maturities based on that cash flow analysis. So that is it for the recommendations for this next quarter.
Thank you, Deanne. So this next slide here is a summary of, essentially a summary of what Deanne just mentioned. High level, we're holding the course, except for the core portfolio. We're going to draw down that total balance just to accommodate having excess liquidity so that we can continue to pay bills. One other thing I might add on the strategy piece there in the highly liquid portfolio, we have one deposit account with Main Bank that we've been reviewing. You may recall this, it was, I believe, a year, maybe 2 years ago, previous treasurer created what's called the LCII, the Local Community Impact Initiative. And essentially, this deposit is a $5 million deposit with a local financial institution. And the goal of that deposit is to then spur economic development within the county. So it's kind of on an annual cycle that we like to review that to see if that's still being used as it's intended. We've also had some other interest from other local financial institutions to potentially expand that. So we'll kind of consider some of those and run it through the investment committee and then bring it up to the board as well. Finally, the investment policy updates. In the last 2 meetings, we've talked about investment policy updates. There's still some really good conversations going through, and I'm really optimistic that we'll get the final version of the investment policy to you in February 2026. And in closing, I might just add, if you're as excited as I am about property tax payments, you can come see us on the 3rd floor because we have trays and trays and trays of mail and a really awesome staff that will go get paper cuts galore, opening envelopes to sort property tax payments. So far we've collected around 26,000 payments from November 1st, and that's around $61 million that we've processed here internally. We also have around $40 million that's come in online, so no paper cuts with those. And in closing, we can questions and discussion, if there are any.
Commissioners, any questions? Vice Chair Barbo?
Just again, thank you always. I appreciate the information and how much you show us and the transparency. And I love the little slides because I can understand them. So thank you
Great.
again.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, thank you. And I'm happy to help. If there's other things you want to see, just let me know.
Commissioner Frank Baca.
Yeah, I just want to echo those sentiments. I always appreciate the briefings I get from the treasurer's office, Ryan, and the treasurer, and it just helps me to understand this very complicated issue. And I'm glad that we have our money in good hands with people who are very knowledgeable and professional. So, including our staff, and I appreciate your including our staff in those discussions as well. And yeah, it's doing your due diligence, and certainly we all appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Baca, thank you.
I have one question for Manager and Deputy Shirley Reagan. Just, I didn't see you ask to speak or anything, but there is that slight adjustment to the core portfolio and some of those things that, have the potential, I guess, to affect operating. Do you all have any concerns with the proposed changes?
Mr. Chair, no, I don't. What's happening is a lot of that money that was in the core, as Deputy Treasurer Travelstead stated, was related to ARPA. And most of the ARPA projects are infrastructure, so they've now gone through the design phase and started in the construction phase. So the money is starting to be expended, and we're pushing to make sure we expend all of those funds by December 31 of 26. So the last report I gave you in September, we had expended 73% of those funds, almost 80 million of the 132 million. So we're really starting to spend down, and a few projects have come to completion, and many more will start by the end of this year. And we do a reimbursement basis to the expenditures, so that's why there's a little bit of lag. But
Thank you. I just thought we would be remiss if we didn't check in with the operations side.
And I might add that we work very closely with the treasurer. We have a investment working group where my team, accounting, and we work together on all of those things. We work with the departments to make sure that we have the right timeline so that we're putting where we expect to spend the cash, whether it's coming in or going out. So we work really closely with them.
Thank you. Yes, County Manager.
And thank you for asking. And I do just want to say both to the treasurer and the deputy treasurer is that we have appreciated the deep level of communication between all parties. And to that end, I will just say that I think even the choice of our money manager right now is one that is enthusiastically shared between us. And the point that was raised specifically by Ryan is that the communication is so critical because you don't want to waste not having money invested, if you can at all help it. And I have had a concern about previously around the required level of liquidity that we actually need. And I've come to really appreciate the balance that they've set, because I think it's, for right now, it is the right balance between those pots of money.
Very good, thank you. Commissioners, any further discussion here? I move to give advice and consent to the proposed quarterly investment strategy as outlined in the Board of Finance report. Do I have a second?
A second.
A second from the Vice Chair and Commissioner Baca. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal in the affirmative.
Aye.
Yes, any opposed? All right, the advice and consent passes by a 5-0 vote. And so our next Board of Finance meeting will be determined when the calendar is finalized, and if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer and Deputy Treasurer.